Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Thirsty Beagle podcast. We have a great lineup of guests today. I'm joined in the Opoko studio by one of the better craft brewers here in the state, Chase Healy of Redbud Brewing, and a new guest, someone that I think we're going to get to learn about who she is and what she does. And a lot of people in the beer community might not know, but we're joined by Sybil Kang, who's the owner of OKCity Brewing, which is, as far as I know, the first brewing cooperative we've had in the state. And we're going to just dive right in and get to learn about that. Sybil, tell us, what is OKC Brewing all about?
OKCity Brewing, it's about promoting our local Oklahoma brewers. We've got some great local guys here and that make a great product, and our space allows them to get their product out into the market without the expensive cost of starting up on your own. So, and
now the building, for people who were trying to create a mental image for what it is, I mean, it's essentially like a fully operating brewery. You've got fermenters, you've got brew kettles, you've got, I guess, areas probably to store grain and all this stuff that the guys might need to brew.
Right.
Kind of give us like a walkthrough of what it looks like out there.
Okay. It is essentially a large warehouse type setting. You walk in and it's a bi-level type area, so there's offices up top, and then below that there's a barrel room. And then we've got where the grain and things are stored, and then you go off into the brew house, and Chase is probably a little bit more, he's in there a whole lot more working, and he can probably describe that a whole lot better in detail than I could.
Yeah, well, Chase, why don't you take it over for people who kind of, might be more savvy with understanding all the terms of the things that are in a brew house and stuff like that.
Sure. No, thank you. Yeah. It is a 15-barrel brew house, a barrel being 31 gallons. So with that, we're able to produce, well, I guess do the math there, it's close to 500 gallons of beer at a time. If we actually have several double batch fermenters, so we're able to produce 30 at a time. And we really have enough fermenters so that everyone can get in there, get the beer they want brewed and kegged, or hopefully here soon, very soon bottled and out the door.
And now there's a bottling line under construction or in the works, or?
Yeah, it's in the works. It's almost ready for production, so we're close to getting that up and running.
Well, cool. Now, Chase, you've been at it with Redbud a year and a half, more than that?
Yeah, a little over a year and a half now. It's amazing how time flies when you're having fun.
And what does it mean for you to kind of have your own space, sort of a space that's more dedicated just for what Redbud's trying to do?
It's fantastic to really have a place that you can really consider more your home. There's a lot less having to work out details as far as getting into the space, and the flexibility is definitely there for us to really do what we want and not be as restricted. So it's really nice to have that kind of flexibility.
And so you've been at it now for that long of time, like you said, about a year and a half. And at OKCity Brewing, we've got some upstarts now. One guy who we're seeing now with his beers out in the bars, and that is Anthem Brewing.
Right.
And fill us in a little bit about who our other brewer out there is right now.
Yeah, essentially, we Redbud had their initial batch, I believe, late April, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then Anthem came on in May, and most recently Black Mesa, just this month, actually. So.
And that's going to be I guess probably will be the next craft brewer that's going to really get their product out there in the market in Oklahoma. So that's pretty exciting, I think.
It is. It's very exciting.
Well, let's take it back to Redbud a little bit. And Chase, you've got, I know on tap at a lot of places, you've got your pale ale and your newest wheat beer. Mm-hmm. How have you found the reception to the wheat beer?
The wheat beer has been fantastic. I really feel like calling it a wheat beer for some maybe a little I wouldn't say deceptive, but it is a lot more interesting than just your typical wheat beer. So calling it that, we wanted people to be comfortable with ordering the beer, but in all actuality, it fits more in the Saison category of beers. It's a more Belgian-style ale. It's light, crisp, refreshing. I was really looking for a beer that we could do relatively low in alcohol, but pretty big in flavor. So that's what we're going for in it. It's a dry hopped beer, and there's a lot of neat little details to it that really make it pretty special, and a beer that I've been pretty proud of thus far.
Nice hop character.
It does.
Beer, would you say?
It does. We use Summit hops in it, which is a pretty interesting hop. A couple years ago, there was a brewer that did this, but in a much larger double IPA, a really big hoppy beer. But the hop that first harvest came off oniony, garlicky. It was a pretty intense hop. The growers have really learned how to get the most out of it, and we're finding with these new harvests, we're getting a very tropical fruit, very bright peach mango type flavors out of it that really complement the light crispness of the beer. I mean, it's about 4.2%, so we're talking about a highly sessionable, light, very tropical, fruity, aromatic beer.
Sounds very nice. And that's probably a lot of places on tap now. Is that kind of the major bars that people might frequent here in the city area?
Absolutely. You're going to find it at places like Tapworks, Republic, McNelly's, just your typical beer bars that are really excited about the local beers seem to be picking it up, and people really seem to be enjoying it quite a bit.
Now, are we going to see Redbud in bottles, in 12-ounce bottles anytime soon, or is that in the works?
It is. The nice thing about the bottling line that we've picked up is it gives us the flexibility to do really any kind of bottle size. So it really gives us the possibility to do things like a 22-ounce bottle, a bomber, or 6-packs. I imagine you'll see the beers out probably initially in a 22-ounce bottle. The reason a lot of brewers go with that at first is it really cuts back on all the packaging. When you do a 6-pack, you're talking about getting a box made, a carrier made, labels. There's a lot that goes into it, whereas with the bomber, you can get a label done and go to market with it. So that'll allow us to get those brands really out there on the shelves right away while we get the other packaging developed, which can really take a decent amount of time, and we'd rather have something on the shelf, it better than nothing.
Yeah. Sybil, what's your favorite Redbud brew? Surely you've tried all of them, I know.
Oh, yeah. It's going to have to be the wheat. I really, really enjoy that. It's got a great citrusy type flavor to it, and it's awesome for this summer heat, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. And obviously, it's, like 20,000 degrees outside every day, so we could all use a refreshing drink, I'm sure. Me personally, Cuvée 4, that's one of the best beers out there, I think. My wife, if you care, likes Cuvée 2. She calls it vacation in a bottle.
Absolutely.
So I think all the Cuvées were highly, well received, highly liked. What do we kind of stand on your offerings, other than obviously like the pale and the wheat,
standards,
which are sort of out there now?
Sure. We do have a small amount of beer aging right now in French oak barrels. They were formerly Pinot Noir barrels. So there's a lot of neat things that we're trying to do down in our barrel cellar. It's a pretty cool little area. Right now, we're pretty soon going to brew, which will be a similar beer to Cuvée 3, which really is the base beer for Cuvée 4. We did a lot with that beer, but really that beer was focused on Simcoe hops, which is a very difficult hop to get. So we're going to be looking to brew a beer fairly similar to that, but actually use a hop called Citra, which the name gives. It's a very big, bright, citrusy hop. So you're going to find a beer that's very similar, but just with a slightly different hop profile that I think people are going to equally be thrilled about. But a decent amount of that will go into barrels as well, and we'll be able to age that with different bugs and microbes and produce something completely different from the same base beer.
Sounds pretty good. Let me ask you, do you feel like there's a certain amount of camaraderie there at the building with these new guys coming in and kind of getting started? Is it kind of like a neat, beer brethren type deal over there?
It really is. A lot of the stuff that we're trying to do in there and, beyond our more standard lineup is stuff that we're experimenting and trying things, and it's always nice to have a fellow brewer to ask a question or two about techniques and in ways to get the best results. So I think we are really there to help one another, to support one another, and if we're unsure of something, it's a phone call or a text away to get a second opinion or an idea of what might be the best solution. Because that's what I really find as a brewer, is you're constantly facing, unfortunately more often than not, problems or issues, not really problems, but just circumstances where you need to make a decision, and sometimes it's just always better to have a second opinion on things, because things just tend to happen while you're brewing beer. You're talking about, we're producing a unfiltered, unpasteurized, fresh product, and it can be a challenge at times, and so it's always nice to have a second set of ears and eyes to help you out.
And Sybil, we were talking a little bit earlier about sort of just the philosophy behind OKCity Brewing and growing the beer culture and stuff like that. And what do you guys kind of hope to achieve in terms of what might be your possible contribution to the beer scene here in the area?
Well, most definitely giving the smaller craft brewers a start, a good start to get out in the market and help them grow, and would love to see them, grow and get in their own facility and hopefully remember us whenever they do. But yeah, it's exciting to be a part of that, and I want each and every one of them to succeed. So, I'm just glad that we get to be a part of that.
Excellent. Yeah, I like to on the podcast also get to kind of some events that are going on in the local beer scene and stuff like that. And obviously, one of the biggest beer events of the year is coming up on Saturday, and that is Wild Brew, which is happening in Tulsa. And I think you're pouring there, right?
Yes.
You're pouring there?
Absolutely.
What are you going to be serving up at Wild
Absolutely.
Brew?
We'll be pouring for sure the pale and the wheat. We may have another couple of surprises, but that's kind of to be determined. But really, for the Tulsa area, I want those people that are attending to try our new wheat beer, and it's on in a couple places in town there. But I think for a lot of people, it'll be a new beer for them to sample. I mean, we've only had it out about a month now, so we're going to definitely have those two beers out for sure.
Sybil, you're going to be heading down the interstate, get your Wild Brew on, or?
I'm not sure if I'm going to make it this weekend, but got some kids' activities. But
I hear you.
we got a lot of events, and we got to kind of spread it around, or it's it can be quite a bit. So
yeah, well, I can just for people out there listening, you can get more info on Wild Brew at my blog, the Thirsty Beagle blog. It is Saturday night, 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock in Tulsa, and of course benefits the Sutton Avian Research Center. Probably one of the biggest selections of craft beer, I think, of any event that is put on in the state in terms of beer events. So that's definitely a pretty cool deal. Another event that's coming up, and that's going to be on August 2nd. It's a Thursday night. It's an IPA day at Tapworks, and IPAs are, for me, one of my favorite drinks, because I think it's where you get a chance to, and Chase, you can, as a brewer here, you can sort of yay or nay this, but it's sort of the chance where you really get to do bold things with the beer and do, different kind of experimental things with the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk about IPAs in general. Like, do you like brewing IPAs? Do you feel like that's a special kind of beer or anything like that? What are IPAs for you?
I think so. I mean, I really feel like the IPA has been one of those beers that has really been like the brewers or the beer drinkers' beer. It is big, bold, and intense. So it's a fun one for brewers to get out and do, and it has been challenging over the past few years. Availability of hops has been very difficult, and getting everything that you want isn't always a possibility anymore. So a few years ago, we could do whatever we wanted and throw as many pounds as we wanted in there, but there was a point a couple years ago where hops were $20 a pound, where they were typically $5, and spending $600, $2,000 on hops for one batch of beer is just a little difficult for small brewers.
Well, yeah, I mean, you start to crunch numbers and wonder if it actually makes sense. I mean, for the average person out there, I mean, how many pounds of hops would you put into, like, a standard commercial brew that you might brew up?
Oh wow,
I know it depends on what style of beer
I mean, if you're just talking about like a standard IPA, oh wow, you might put 25, 30 pounds of hops in a batch. But you're talking a double IPA, a large beer with a significant hop influence, you might be talking closer to 60 pounds worth.
So obviously availability,
the hops,
what you try to do.
And then all of those hops soak up the beer, and so you have more loss, and so they just get very expensive to brew, and that can just be difficult. I think every brewer wants to brew a big double IPA with 100 pounds of hops in it, and at least I do. But sometimes it's just you have to get pretty creative, and one way brewers are doing that is actually including spices. You'll hear about white IPAs now, and brewers taking the spices that you might use in a wit beer and using those to get some of those citrus notes and other things that a lot of hops provide, but being able to do it with an alternative to just throwing a ton of hops into the beer.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can give any secrets away or anything like that, but I mean, is there an IPA in the works for Redbud, maybe in the long-term planning stages or something like that?
I really feel a beer like what we'll do. It's funny. I'll just go ahead and the next beer, which is our kind of a rendition of Cuvée 3, we're going to call Hoppy Trees, and it's a Bob Ross reference there for those that are familiar. But it really is a more or less Belgian IPA.
That's a great style, yeah.
So what we achieve there is using a yeast that ferments the beer a little further, giving us a much drier palate for the beer. And really what I find with that is you can use a little bit less hops but get a bigger significant punch from them because there's not as much malt character to fight through. It creates kind of a canvas for you just to lay the hops on. And so that beer with all those citra hops, if you didn't know, I mean, you could call it an IPA, but I prefer it is still a Saison. It's the style I'm pretty passionate about, but if I wanted to slap Belgian IPA on there, I think everyone would still love it. So
yeah. Well, and you'll have your full chance for any and all kinds of hoppy beers you want at the IPA Day at Tapworks, which is August 2nd in the evening again, and they're going to have a whole menu laid out with IPA-infused offerings, stuff like that. I went last year. It was a good time, and I know if you're out there listening, you should try to stick it on your calendar. I think we're going to wrap it up for today. Sybil, anything else you want to share about OKCity Brewing?
Just that we're really excited to be on the craft brewery scene and excited about the things to come, and appreciate you having us here.
Oh, hey, no problem. Thanks for joining us, guys. That'll do it for episode 3 of the Thirsty Beagle podcast. Stick with the Thirsty Beagle blog for all your news on the local blog scene, and I'll try to see if I can score you some inside dirt on what Redbud's doing next year. So thanks a lot, everyone.